Good afternoon, everybody. This is Akta Sehgal Malhotra from the Motherhood Club Talk Show. So far, we have been hearing the journeys of mother who have been inspiring each one of us, have been sharing their challenges, how they have dealt with them. But today, we are starting a new series where we have a father who is going to talk about his journey as to how he let go of his corporate world, a high-flying job, and decided to be with his children, to nurture them, and to personify what we call as fatherhood. Today, our guest is Mr. Rohit Malhotra, who has 26 years of experience, having worked with some of the prominent names in the industry, an IIT IIM alumnus, and a father of two children, an adult daughter, and a teenage son. So, very warm welcome, Mr. Rohit Malhotra, on our first maiden episode of the fatherhood journey. And it indeed gives us enough and more pleasure for you to be here and share all that you have to share with us. But before that, I'd like to quote that what makes someone a man is not that he can make a child, but how he raises him is what defines him to actually be a man. So we have a ritual here where we'd like you to introduce yourself, talk a little bit about yourself, your journey, and the topic that you have chosen, that a father is a leader, is a mentor, is a guide. So over to you, Mr. Malhotra.
Thank you, Ekta, and I'm really delighted to be here on this forum. Genuinely humbled that you think I can share my story and my learnings with your group. Um, yeah, I'm a kind of a regular product of the middle class Indian ecosystem. Was blessed enough and lucky enough to make it to probably some of the best institutes in this country with my engineering and my MBA. And to a great extent, actually, the what set me on my path to at least professional success, I attributed to a great extent to what my parents did for me and with me, especially when I was a kid, and more specifically, my father. I, to a great extent, I believe that the person that I am, the man that I am, the success that I've had in my life was because of all the kind of valuable time that my father spent with me, invested in me, and was always there for me. And today, having been now a father to two kids, I now even more deeply realize uh, how much value he added to me. I don't think as a kid and as even in my college days or when I was working, I realized the true value of what he actually did for me. But now, when I'm myself in my father's shoes in many ways for my kids, and I see some of the challenges and some of the struggles and some of the issues that confront specifically our kids of today's generation, I'm really able to kind of appreciate what my dad did for me. And in a very small and in a very humble manner, I'm trying to kind of pay back. I'm trying to give back what I kind of gained from my father. It's just, this is
Wonderful,
in many ways a tribute to my father.
wonderful, wonderful. And in fact, thank you for bringing that out. December happens to be my father's birthday month, and this is my way of, giving him a tribute to have father because he also, like your father, really worked upon imbibing the values in us, me and my brother. And I think we are what we are because of him. And I also feel that uh, parenting is a joint effort between a mother and a father. While one does understand that father is predominantly the bread earner of the family, and that has been the case always, whether it was in our parents' generation or ours or for the generations to come. But I think there has been a change in the way now fathers are taking on that responsibility a lot more engaged in an engaging way than it was earlier. Earlier probably the fathers would come in wherever there was an exam or a situation of crisis, but now they play a very different role. So we'd like you to share your journey, how it was to begin with, then you had your first born to the second, and you spent 26 years in the corporate world, and you eventually decided to not just take a sabbatical, but you called it a retirement at the age of 50. So, would like to know all about that and what was the main reason that you did that?
Yeah, sure. But I mean, before I start, I think something that you said about fatherhood, I think resonates very deeply. And I think a shining example of that today is actually you look at a guy like Virat Kohli, right? I mean, some of these stories about him have been very iconic. And the most iconic story about him when he was a kid was, I think, when he was kind of selected to play for Delhi for the Ranji. I think the day that he was supposed to bat, the previous day, I think his father had passed away. And he went out to play, right? And that's about, I reckon, about 15, 20 years back. To cut to today, that Virat Kohli possibly is leaving India on probably one of its most iconic tours to be back home in Delhi with his wife on the birth of his first child. And that to me pretty much just kind of exemplifies the kind of transition, the kind of roles that current fathers have in the bringing up of their kids. I, of course, am of a slightly earlier generation, so I don't think I had the benefit of what Virat is doing. Like you just mentioned, I had an intense career for 26 years, and to be honest with you and with your audience, I think to a great extent I was an absentee dad. There's no two doubts about it. I was literally slogging it out in the corporate world, in the so-called dog eat dog world. You want to call it the rat race, whatever it may be. There were very few days when I used to get back home before 10 at night. By the time I got back home, my kids were asleep. By the time they got up in the morning to go to school, I was groggy-eyed and had hardly any kind of energy or value addition to make to them apart from just the cursory highs and buys. And that pretty much was my story for a big chunk of my working life. My elder daughter, who's actually now she's almost going to be 21, I think her childhood just passed away in a complete blur for me. Only thing I remember was coming home and she was asleep, and in the morning she was like in a school dress going off, and I was just about waking up. And I was an absentee dad, and all credit and all effort and all the credit actually goes to my wife for having kind of brought up our two kids. But having reached a certain stage in life, and as my daughter went off to college, and I started thinking about these issues deeply, and I realized that professional success was no longer the thing that I was kind of living for and striving for, and I genuinely wanted to be a part of my kids' story, a part of their lives. My daughter had already kind of, gone off to college, so there was not much that I could kind of do in terms of spending time with her. But my younger son, who's now a teenager, he's now 15, was growing up in front of my eyes, going through those typical transition issues, growing up issues, and my father's time with me tugged at my heart. Was I being fair with my son? Did I Was I even spending a fraction of the time that my dad spent with me and made me what I am? And therefore I started getting into that kind of a mindset, that kind of, you may call it a guilt also. And I think that motivated me, that provoked me to set off on this quest and this direction that I am currently on. Having said that, I think there were other factors that play. I think I also realized very uniquely, and I don't know whether this is going to be relevant to your audience. And I'm saying this just of a very finite universe of having seen my daughter kind of grow up, though at slight remote distance, and my son growing up actively, and then seen and shared stories of other friends of mine who had similar kids and stuff like that. The other unique part is that I think girls, as children, they grow up much faster, they mature much faster, they seem to be a bit more sorted out, and that's the biological bit in each one of us. I'm sure the wives will be very happy about this. My wife is but I've seen there's a fair amount of difference. Girls tend to be a bit more independent, a bit more matured, a bit more sorted out at the same ages. It's not so with boys. They have far more distractions, and there are far more things going on. And I always felt that as a young kid who had gone through that chaotic teenage period, I could kind of relate to with my son. I could understand what he was going through, and I thought I could kind of help him to just navigate his way through the uh, fascinating years that teenage life is, and help him to find his destiny, his calling, his true sense of direction.
Right. Yeah. So I think it's been about 2.5 years that you decided to, take a break and be with him, or for that matter, get retired. So, how do you see that transition that you have experienced has impacted the overall development of your son, who's now a teenager?
So, actually, I just want to kind of give a bit of a preamble for your for your audience. I think one of the triggers for me also was on one of my flights parked at an airport somewhere at some god unearthly hour. I went through this write up by this gentleman called Devdutt Patnaik, and that really stirred me. And if I would encourage you to kind of share that link with your audience. And it actually talks about the story of Krishna. For those of you who are not aware of Devdutt Patnaik, he was actually a corporate. He was in the corporate world, and then got deeply interested in Indian mythology, and used stories from Indian mythology to try and bring learnings from Indian mythology in terms of relevance in our current modern times. And he writes one of these fabulous stories, which is probably extracted from the Puranas, about Krishna, Lord Krishna, and his son, Samba, who turns out to be a bit of a negative character or a minstrel, and not at all follows any of the exalted path that his godly father had, to the extent that he's actually a big black mark on Krishna. And one of the big learnings that Devdutt Patnaik hypothesizes from that is that Lord Krishna possibly was he just asked this question, was he too busy solving the problems of the world in terms of Arjuna and the Pandavas and the battles of Mahabharata to be able to devote that kind of time to bringing up his child, Samba, with the right inputs, the right values? And he then asks a question that are all of us, and this he's asking from a point of view of people who are in the corporate world or leading very busy career lives, are we also being Lord Krishna in our own lives, which is solving and going out the extra mile and spending those long hours at work to crack professional excellence and glory, but at the same time neglecting our children? I think I've kind of just summarized that story in a very brief nutshell. But Devdutt Patnaik, he's a fabulous writer. This article is written in the Economic Times. You can kind of extract it from Google in August 2015. And I remember I read it somewhere sitting in an airport, and it stirred something in me. And I kind of started asking myself that. And that's how then finally it culminated in my journey in leaving the corporate world in early 2019 to spend time with my son.
Wonderful.
To
I've
come back
shared
to
the link.
sure.
I've shared that link, and I think a lot of people, do derive a lot of information and everything from the, these god figures. And I think why just Krishna, and with no offense meant to any people who believe in these gods, but even if you look at, Ramchandra, he also let go of his children in their growing years because of whatever reasons that he had, which everybody knows, that everybody has probably read the Ramayana. So, well, I think it is very important, as you rightly said, that if fathers take out that time, because I think from a quantity, but the quality that they spend with the children, that has an everlasting impact on them. And I also feel that I'd like to read out a quote here that Clarence B. Cullen says that my father didn't tell me how to live; he lived and let me watch him do it. Since a mother spends enough and more quantity and quality time with the children, so children watch them day in and day out. But that
Yeah.
little glimpses that a child gets of the father, there is so much that you derive from that, because you feel that this personality is not there always. So how much can I derive from this person? And that definitely has an impact. And and I see that even in my 4-year-old, who would see her father, in the evenings, and she would copy him, though she's a girl, but she would copy him in as many ways as she can. So I think fathers really have a very lasting impact on them. And I hope everybody does read this article that Mr. Devdutt Patnaik has shared. and definitely gets inspired from you that, fathers play a very important role. So, yes, coming back to your journey.
Yeah. So early 2019, when I quit to be a full-time home father, if I may kind of call my current role and designation, my son was about 13 and a half. Yeah. He was in class 8. And, you know, when I was leading that busy life of mine, the only conversations I used to have with him were about cricket. He was passionate and mad about cricket. I was equally passionate and mad about cricket. I think like probably 100% of our population. And those were the only conversations I used to have. And on weekends, when I used to kind of try and get back from a very busy, hectic week to recharge my batteries, the only thing which I could kind of do was play cricket with him. So our conversations had become pretty restricted just to cricket, and that was the only thing that we kind of engaged in. I obviously wanted to change that as I kind of settled in at home, and he was also getting into senior school. So I decided to kind of start spending time with him on areas that interested him, which obviously included cricket, but also start talking to him on other areas, including academics and other interests, etc. Started off with cricket. He, at that point in time, had gotten into playing and selected for some of the junior level clubs in Bangalore, where we stay. And since now I didn't have to go to office, I used to go with him in the morning, wherever his club or his team was playing, in whichever nook and corner of Bangalore. We used to kind of get into the car early morning, packed with our breakfast and lunch. He and I used to drive off to the ground, and I used to be possibly the only parent sitting at the ground watching a bunch of 22 small kids, classes, ages. This is under 15 levels, watching him play his cricket, sharing my thoughts on what he had done well, what he didn't do well. There were each moment that you spend with the kid is an opportunity to imbibe something in him. And I remember a match that I went to with him, and that's about a 1.5 hour drive away from home. He was playing this match, and there was this terror fast bowler in the other team. And I was sitting on the sidelines watching. I was sitting away from the pavilion because I didn't want to intrude on his personal time with his teammates and stuff like that. But I could figure out that he would be shitting bricks at literally the prospect of facing up to this fast bowler. And that's exactly what happened after the game got over. When I went up to him and he asked me, "Did you see that fast bowler?" I said, "Yeah, he was pretty good. He was fast." And so I was terrified about facing him, and that's when you have a fabulous conversation. Vedant, in life, there will be moments, occasions, people who will seem absolutely daunting. The challenge will be staring you in the face. But you've got to gather your wits about you. These are fabulous occasions to learn because you will face bigger challenges in life. And go do your best. Don't be, yes, there will be fear. It's a natural human emotion. In many ways, it also helps you to pump that much more adrenaline to the brain, to the various muscle parts, etc., to ensure that you're ready for the battle that's there. But these are battles, and never be scared of facing up to those battles. Experience the fear, experience the dryness in your mouth, but gird yourself up because these are battles that you will face. And these conversations actually are so enriching because the kid is processing it in ways and means that we can't even understand. He will not remark anything on your comment. He will not even say anything. He may not even respond. My son is a bit introverted, so he will not even respond, and he'll have a very passive look on his face. Suddenly 6 months later, at some other forum or on some other thing, he will pipe up and he'll say, that time you said me this, you told me this, and I'm trying to kind of imbibe it and practice. And you realize that in a small way, you made a difference. So I started the journey with cricket because that was one common passion that we had, and we had kind of engaged on for about 5-10 years. And then quickly we kind of took it forward into other areas. I remember when I was, for instance, working, and I just didn't have the time. There's another topic that he had raised about his sports day. He was very passionate about running for some strange reason, which I never kind of gotten into. But he used to ask, I want to race 100 meters and 200 meters, and can you help me? And I had no clue how do you help a kid to understand how to run 100 meters. And I was busy, and I said, chalo, theek hai, sometime we'll do, etc., etc. Some goalie I gave, and managed to get that. That was when I was working. But when I kind of quit, obviously this conversation came up around sports day, and he said, "Look, I want to kind of race, and I want to do 100 meters." So, yeah, let's do it. I will go. I told him very candidly, "Look, I'm not a runner, but we'll practice. Yeah, we'll kind of apply our common sense. We'll look up the internet. We'll do some things together, and we'll prepare you." And lo and behold, last year in the sports day, he won the silver medal for his age group, and he won the gold medal for the 4 into 100 meters relay. And
Wonderful.
the fastest pace again, there is this when he was, I didn't know anything about running, but all we did was I used to go down religiously with him in the evenings. We stay in an apartment complex. We used to go down on the ground floor. I just helped him crack it methodically. So we kind of identified a stretch in our complex. We measured 100 meters approximately, measured the length of a brick, and then figured out how many bricks would make 100-meter. In many ways, therefore, I was trying to just help him, solve a practical problem. How does one measure 100 meters? You don't have to go down with a tape and measure 100 meters. Apply your basic practical sense, measure 100 meters. And then I used to make him run. I used to time. And every time he used to come and ask me how much did I time. And we used to set targets on improving the timings. I was only managing him because I'm not a runner by pedigree or something. We're just trying to manage him by managing an output KPI like timing. And that excited him. He said, okay, today I did in 14.5. I'm going to gun for 14. And we'll do sub 14. And lo and behold, he won a medal. I remember even when he was just getting into the competition, he came one day and he was very apprehensive. It was a competition between class 9 and class 10 kids. And in the finals, there were 4 class 10 kids and there were 2 class 9 kids. And his first response is, so the 4 class 10 kids will be better than me. So I'll aspire for the 5th and 6th position. And that's again a trigger for a fabulous conversation. Hey, Vedant, why? Hey, that kid is just 1 year older than you, yeah. And you've put in the effort. We've spent the last 3 months working on this. Do not think class 9, class 10. You just go and give your best. The rest, the system will take care. And he had tears in his eyes when he beat the class 10 guys. So it's in many ways instilling self-belief in a kid. So the journey started from there, and obviously then it started getting into academics also, because that was a part that was important. And on subjects that I could kind of, I was interested in, I was passionate, I had a body of learning, so to say. I kind of used to sit with him and help him. And these were subjects like maths, physics, chemistry, and economics. And and I could sense, I was doing it in a manner that I was not intruding on his space. I remember one of my bosses in the corporate world, a very fine gentleman by the name of Vineet Taneja. He had mentioned this. I think when he was similarly probably struggling with his teenage kids. He used to say, Rohit, what I do, teenage kids, they grow up and then they have their own independence and they have a streak of rebelliousness around them. But he said, just to kind of engage with them, I don't kind of go and force myself in their face and demand what they're doing or try to intrude on their space. He says, I take a book or a laptop or the paper and I just go and sit in their room and I just read. So I'm just kind of physically around without intruding on their space. And you will realize kids are so curious, kids are so inquisitive, kids are so questioning. If you're just sitting around them and just doing your own thing, suddenly after 5, 10, 15 minutes, he'll pipe up and he'll ask you some random topic under the sun. Normally, if you're not there in his eye gaze vision, he'll probably think about it and forget it and move on to the next topic that interests him. But if you're around him, he will pop up something, and that's the start of a conversation. And I kind of started doing that. I used to just, so his room to some extent became my favorite place to just go chill out, read a book, read the paper, or check out my WhatsApp messages without trying to disturb him. And lo and behold, I knew he would suddenly ask me something. And that was the start of a fabulous relationship and a fabulous time that I've spent in trying to help him navigate life.
Wonderful. So I think, what really got him the medal is, of course, the effort that he put in. But I think that that feeling that my father is around, not just, metamorphically or that, okay, Papa is there, but you were physically present with him. And I think that gave him that confidence and that support, which I think, having seen some of the friends and their kids who are in their teenage group, or I think, my personal experience says at a certain age in time, as much as they say that daughters are more attached to fathers and sons are to the mother, but at a certain age, the girl will need the mother to have that kind of comfort and support, and the son would need the father to have that kind of. And I think, at the right juncture, you were able to give him that support. So, and I think, we can see that, the way you're telling that he won a couple of medals, and he's involving himself with interactions with you. So let's look at the flip side of it. It's always overwhelming to have the father around, because father is always supposed to be that strict figure in the home. So over the last 2 years, how has his response been to you? That okay, now Papa is home and he's being there to help me, but at the same time he's there, to watch me over also. So from a child's point of view, is there any kind of a conversation or feedback he gives you?
Yeah. So I think the important part there is how do you kind of approach it, right? If see and do bear in mind that my experiences with my children are fundamentally post teenage, or pretty much teenage. I didn't have the luxury to be very very a hands-on dad when they were like 4 years and 5 years and 7 years. So I was very mindful of the fact that I didn't want to be completely micromanaging his life or completely intruding into every aspect of his life. I wanted to be there somewhere in the background, like a guy who can kind of he can bounce off ideas, be a sounding board, and help him out in things that kind of challenged him and kind of bogged him down. The interesting part, actually, what happened was that since he started seeing success, like I talked about the athletics example, right? I mean, overnight he became a hero with his classmates and stuff like that, right? He started seeing success in academics, to the extent I remember one of his classmates said, actually went and cribbed to his father. Look, Vedant is doing so well because his father is spending all his time with you, and you don't spend any time with him. And that message came back to my wife. The kid picks this up, right? He's picked it up. He's realizing. You realize that when you start becoming a part of your kid's journey at a more deeper level, and he starts seeing small successes, and every success begets the next round of success, and the kid gets energized by that, and then the relationship is that much more deeper. So both in his case and my case, I think since he started seeing some of those very very visible signs of success, for instance, another success that he cracked, riding on this, he was already a part of his school cricket team. He cracked these medals in his athletics in school, and he had started coming at the top of his heap in his class in academics. I think in his class, I think the entire all the sections is a batch of about 120 kids, and when they were getting into class 10, the teachers actually have a process by which they vote for 4 kids out of the 120 kids who become prefects, the 2 girls and 2 boys. So that's almost like a 3 to 4% kind of. This probably the top 4% in terms of all around capable. And he was one of the guys. And I think he never in his wildest imaginations had ever expected to become a prefect in class 10. And those kind of successes that he felt somewhere subconsciously, that both my wife and I were kind of helping him in achieving those successes, which kind of possibly, I would say, allowed him to be very, very open to the kind of inputs and directions that I was kind of giving him whenever he wanted, or whenever I felt that he was straying on a different direction or a wrong path. But I think it's important to be respectful of the relationship. I've had a lot of my friends tell me that once, especially let's talk about sons, once they cross this 15, 16 years stage, they actually become completely independent. And I actually have a very close friend of mine. He's in Chandigarh, whose son actually he tried to traverse the same journey as me in terms of giving up the corporate life, but his kid was already into class 11, and he actually shared that he did not see as much success because he felt that his kid had crossed a certain threshold where he wanted that hand holding. And I reckon I was a bit lucky in the sense that my engagement with my kid at this age, at this level, started when he was in class 8, which is, I think I just got it right by about 2.5 years. And now I see that in the last 2.5 years that I've been a part of my son's journey, I can sense the streak of independence, the streak of sometimes wanting to do stuff that he wants to do, and I kind of let him be. Uh, is increasing compared to what it was 2 years back, and it's a fabulous thing, because I sometimes actually always have this thought at the back of my mind that I don't, while I'm there to help him and guide him and nurture him and be some kind of a sounding board, and now as he's getting into his class 10 and 11, I don't want him to become dependent on me. Actually,
Right.
I now the joke with him is, look, let's see how you and when you become completely independent of me and don't even need me around. And that's possibly our next journey that we kind of planning for the next couple of years, which kind of then sets him up for college. So it's a fabulous question that you're asking, Ekta. And I think it's important that for the parents to be cognizant of it, be mindful of it. Fortunately, in my case, I think we kind of got it right. I don't know if he'll have a different version if you were to kind of speak independent of me. But thus far, we've been kind of been very
Right.
respectful of those boundaries and been try to approach it in a very win-win manner.
Absolutely. That's wonderful to hear. But I have a question here to ask you that, you took up retirement at the age of 50, right? There might not be many who can afford this, right? Because
Yeah.
we all understand that, anything and everything that one has to do in life, whether we like it or not, money is something which is important to be able to, allow a child to pursue his or her passion or academics or anything for that matter, right? Now, my question to you is that, if someone cannot do this, where he decides to retire or even take a sabbatical for that matter, uh, in hindsight, what would you have done that you didn't have to retire and then spend that time with your child? And fortunately for you, that you could do this at the right time when he was in his class 8. But what would be your advice or suggestion to fathers who want to do this but they cannot quit? So how can they do it while they are in their job? What are those key things that you realize that you wish you had done while you were working also, if you have thought about it?
Oh, very difficult question, actually. Very difficult question. You know, I mean, if you ask me, frankly speaking, I think I needed to get more. What should I have done differently to have been able to kind of earmark more time for my children while I was on the job? I think be more organized, be more time savvy in terms of really valuing every precious minute that I had, and kind of earmarking it optimally at work to ensure that I'm back at home on time. In terms of, I think, the burnout that a lot of people have in the corporate world, which is what also leads us to not being able to spend all our time with our children at home, was the fact that uh, trying to invest in some kind of meditation stroke yoga. I myself started my journey with art of living, pranayam, way back in 2010, in terms of being able to have mental peace and mindfulness and being always present in the present. These are some of the things that I think can help. I think just introspecting on what your priorities are, and trying to get the right balance between the professional life and the personal life. Just having one is always counterproductive, because the balance is not right. And at the same time, I must say, this is very easy to say, hard to practice. But so I would say basically it's about investing a little bit in meditation, investing time in some kind of self discovery, in terms of what is kind of really holding you back from being able to spend more time with kids. And in my case, I think it was about being more organized, managing my time better, and also kind of delegating better. Yeah. And but genuinely, I think I didn't kind of crack that piece, and therefore today I'm kind of taking this path, but of course with no regrets.
Wonderful. So, he's in the 10th right now, right?
Yeah.
And 11th, 12th, and then he kind of flies out, to pursue his graduation and then so on and so forth. So effective, and as you rightly said that, the next step that you need to work upon is to make him independent completely, where he takes his own decisions with guidance and mentoring by you and your spouse. So once he moves out, and he uh, kind of chalks out his journey, what would be the next thing that the father Rohit Malhotra would do? Because
How?
yeah,
Yeah. So, um, when I actually quit, I had a massive bucket list. Top of my bucket list was obviously my son. But at a personal level, there are several things that I kind of had. And they were as crazy as playing tennis, learning to swim, which I kind of cracked last year, learning salsa, on which my wife refuses to be a willing partner. But someday I will work on her once my son is out of the house. Learning the guitar, and of late I've been thinking. In fact, today morning itself, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who works in the social sector and trying to look at opportunities in the social sector in terms of trying to give back to society. There are a couple of conversations that I've already started having, and I'm kind of already contemplating if it's possible for me to kind of start looking at some of those roles even right now as my son starts getting into his class 11. So those are some of the things. So there's some personal stuff around salsa, guitar, continuing to learn to swim, tennis, continuing with my tennis, as well as kind of trying to see if I can add value in the social sector.
wonderful, wonderful. All right. So I have just two last questions for you. One, which is a ritual that we'd like you to give one piece of advice to all the parents who are listening to us or who would be listening to us. That is one. That's the second question actually. And the first is that you know what is the feedback that your son gives you uh, to the father before 50 and to the father after 50, and what have been your learnings from him?
Right. So my one message to aspiring fathers and parents on this particular group is try 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 and spend as deep. I don't think it's the quantity or the amount of time that you spend with your kid, and this is a message especially to working parents. I think it's about how rich a moment or how deep is that particular engagement or transaction. And I genuinely say this from the bottom of my heart. All parents mean and wish and want the best for their children. There's no doubt about it. But in our harried lives, we get so caught up with our work pressures and our daily transactions and stuff like that sometimes our relationships with our children also get very, very transient and very transactional. I think just kind of ensuring that there's that sacred sense around it and being able to just kind of richly engage with the kid. And I tell you, once you engage with the kid with that kind of richness, with that kind of genuineness, with that kind of honesty of purpose, with that kind of depth of feeling, the kid picks it up instantly and he responds and he reciprocates. And then he kind of starts on a path of self discovery, self revival, thriving, etc. And it's really fulfilling. So that's my first thought. I don't know about the kid perceiving me before 50 and after 50. I think before 50 he felt I was more like a a cricketer bum chum who used to only talk to him about cricket. We used to just discuss Virat Kohli and Bumrah and Dhoni and IPL, RCB and CSK and all that kind of shit chat. Uh, I have a funny feeling now he sees me as somebody who's genuinely helping him to kind of figure out his place in this planet. And whatever that place is, we've still not figured out what that place is. But he kind of, in terms of helping him to achieve whatever his passions are, whatever his areas of excellence is. And I think in this all this piece, I think, like I mentioned earlier, is this whole piece of imbibing the right values, passing on the right messages with the right value constructs. And a lot of those are around very simple things like placing the right emphasis on hard work. And a lot of our kids are very talented, and they do things. They actually tend to do the things which come to them very easily because they sense success very easily. But sometimes they come up short on stuff like hard work, and you've got to keep imbibing in them those values of hard work. And my constant messaging to my son has been, for instance, talent will get you up to a point, but after that it's gonna be hard work which takes you all the way. And just to go back to our cricketing analogies and stories, I always cite the example of Virat Kohli. I mean, when Virat Kohli got into the Indian team, he was not the best batsman. Forget about the best batsman in the world. He was not the best batsman in India by any stretch. But look at the way he's worked on himself. He spends incredible hours in the nets, in the gym. Today, he's reckoned to be the fittest person, fittest cricketer, and everybody reckons him to be the best batsman. He's got there by virtue of hard work. It was talent which got him into the team, but it's hard work which has gotten him to being literally the number one in the world. So using those kind of stories which are relevant to the kid in terms of imbibing those values, and the kid picks it up. Uh, some kids are very responsive. My kid is not very responsive. He has very passive and a deadpan expression on his face all the time. But you know that he's kind of resonating because after a month or 2 months, he will replay those words or actions back to you, and wow, eureka, he's kind of gotten it. So I think that's been a transition between pre-50, post-50 for me. I don't know what your
Wonderful.
last question. I answered all your questions,
What
or
have
was
you
there another
learned
question?
from him? What have you learned from him? Because they always say that your children teach you so much.
Yeah, what I've learned from these kids is they are so fabulous and so nimble with technology. If I've got I'll probably take days and months to crack any new element of technology. But these guys are so nimble and so intuitive with technology and anything new that I've literally learned to respect and be in awe of their comfort with technology, be it the smart TV, be it the remote, be it smartphones, be it stuff that you can do on laptops, etc., etc. I think that's really an amazing thing about the younger generation.
Super, super. So thank you so much, Mr. Malhotra, for being with us, for sharing your journey and inspiring many parents that, what it takes is the quality of time to be with your children. And, if you can spend that extra moment with them, nurture them, have those conversations, because I think in many ways, the example that you've shared is, conveying that it is very, very important to communicate with your children to get to their level to understand that what is it that they need, and find ways and means to kind of not just teach them but mentor them. And I, personally believe that mentoring is a two-way process. That if we mentor them, they in turn mentor us, and we because when you have to teach them something or mentor them something, going back to our school days, there were different ways and means where the way we were taught, and we definitely take cues from our parents how they uh, they taught us this experiential learning. I think fathers were very hands on when it came to experiential learning, uh, giving you real examples and everything. So I think you're doing a wonderful job, and I'm sure your son Vedant will shape up in the way you want him to be. And it's very, very nice to have you here, share your journey. And once again, thank you so much, and thank you everybody who was here, listening to us, watching us, or who would be watching us. And this was our maiden episode with the father to talk about what really fatherhood means. And fatherhood is not just about getting things, the materialistic things, or get the money home, but it's a lot more. And that's why I say that a father is a leader, a guide, and a mentor. And somebody is saying that oh, you're being welcomed as the first superhero on our club because you're the first father who's being interviewed on our platform. So thank you so much. And for all of you who are listening and watching us, if you know of a father who has an inspirational story, which I'm sure each one of them has, please do share, and we would be very happy to speak to them. And thank you, Mr. Malhotra from AutoPass, for being here at the Motherhood Club Talk Show. And
Thanks.
for all
Thanks.
of you, we will be back again with yet another journey of a mother and father very soon. Till then, stay tuned. This is Akta Sehgal Malhotra. Have a safe evening and a safe, stay ahead because of the pandemic. Stay safe, be safe. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ekta.